WP-Get Web Dev Tutorials for all user levels. Okay people, so I just wanted to quickly show you where I'm up to with my Elementor container-based starter site. So I'm getting there, just adding elements to it, and as I keep saying, the idea of this is to just give you a really quick start on things that you commonly use. So showing you quickly where I'm up to, and I've got to keep adding to this. So I've already taken you through the home here where we set all the defaults. Now the next is the blocks, which I've started on. So at the moment I've just got border cap blocks, so I just add a class to this block and I end up with some corner caps on it. Also I get some variations in colors and a variation from either top left bottom right or bottom left top right. Over here I've got a reveal block, which is a click to toggle. So I click on a button and it toggles my container here. It's also got some text fade in there as well. Or I've got a button over here which I toggle on and it hovers the container. Or I've just got some content here which I hover over and it displays. So these are all variations of the same content blocks using the BEM block element modifier methodology. I've then done the same with a service block, and this is just very quick mock-up stuff. So I've got a standard one which gives me my primary color for my icon, and as I roll over I get my primary color for the title and my icon goes to secondary. And then I've just got a variation where it starts with secondary and a variation where it starts with accent, and the color of the title changes as well. So that's a standard sort of a block that I would use. And then what I've done for my third example here, I've taken out the description and the call to action in the service block. So the rest of this is the same. And I've put this toggle to click block inside it instead. So if we have a look at the last example here, I've still got my same service block, but I don't have this description and call to action. What I've got is my click to toggle. So pretty much the same as it was up there. So I'm just demonstrating this to show you the benefit of if you use widgets, or if you look for packs that contain widgets to do these kinds of things, you're very restricted to what those widgets actually do. If you create your own blocks, you can put them wherever you like. You can actually stack these, like they can be a block within another block, or a block could be an individual element. It depends on how you want to use it. So in this case we've used a main block, which is the service block, and inside it we put our toggle block. All right, so that's giving you ultimate control. Now this isn't for the beginner. The beginner will just use the built-in widgets or find plugins that give you additional widgets. This is for people who want more control over the design of every single element. All right, so that's the blocks, and I should say the reason I'm putting them here is that effectively what I want to do is that in the editor I want to right click on one of these, copy it, and paste it into somewhere else, change my styles, and away we go. So instead of just dragging and dropping a widget from the sidebar, we've got to copy and paste it from one of these utility pages, but we get a lot more control. All right, so on that I've got some animations that I've translated across. It's a simple viewport animation. So I like subtle animations, so you can see the first one down here, it just comes in by, I think I've got scaling from about 0.9 through to 1. So it's just a very small movement. The next one's the same, but it's got a rotation on it. Got a couple of clip reveals here. The left one's got a slight delay from the right one and a different clip reveal. We've got our highlighters and our underlines. And that's pretty much what I've done there. So if I want to use this clip reveal, I'll just copy that from the editor, that is not from the live front end, paste it somewhere, change the properties, and away we go. Same with these, I can just copy and paste those animations as well. Decorations, this is the one that probably is more interesting for me. I'm not really keen on animating everything. I see because you can, you do type thinking where every time you move or scroll, everything animates, and I find that quite frustrating and annoying as a user. I think the temptation to do it is obvious. I've done the same. Just because you think it looks cool. In the end, it just starts looking like a bit of a spaghetti with animation. So I like very subtle little animations when you want to highlight something. All right, but in these decorations, there's no animations. So I've got a basic underline examples, and it uses my colors from primary variation, secondary variation, and accent variation. So this is if I just add a class to an element, for these, it will just add those for me there. I've then got the same elements, but I've used attributes to make them thicker, and they're aligned to the left, and they're only 50% of the width of the element. The next one down is exactly the same, but I've told it to align them to the right. And then the last one here is just a custom gradient. So on the first three, I've got my primary to transparent, secondary to transparent, accent to transparent, and then on the next three are just the reverse of that, so transparent to primary, etc. So that's my underlines, same for my overlines. It's just the reverse, obviously, so it's just going on the top rather than on the bottom. And the way I've named all these, you can actually add both classes and attributes to a element, so you can get an overline and an underline as well. Now, and then I've got some basic markers. So here's my markers here. Again, primary variation, secondary variation, accent variation. These are exactly the same, but I've put a border radius on them. These are exactly the same, but I've put a border radius and I think a 5-degree rotation on those, all through attributes. And then here's some corner caps, where the first one is my first variation 1, where it's top right, bottom left, and it's got primary, secondary and accent colors, and I've made them a bit small. I think I've made that about 10 pixels or something, so it just fits with that. The next one is exactly the same as the top, but I've left the size of these on their default of 2 rem. That'll work probably better with some bigger text. It doesn't work too well with this text here. And this is just the heading 4 element, by the way, that I've added these two. And then I've got the bottom one, which is my variation 2. So all that's doing compared to the top is putting the caps at the bottom left and top right, whereas the first one is the top left, bottom right. So that's the variations I have there. So what is the point of doing all this? Why lay all this out? I'm going to show you that now. So if I have a look at this, if I want to create a new page, oops, wrong button. New page. Okay, and I'll just chuck a basic container in there, and always, if it's my first container, make it a section. It's just a good HTML semantics, I think. I wish there was defaults for this, but there isn't. So I've got a section here. Now, I look at these and I say, okay, actually that's not what I'm looking for. I think I just edited the wrong page. So for example, I'm looking in here and I want this gradient here. So it's the accent to transparent as an underline. So the way I would do that is I go to my decorations page, and it's the second one there, that's the one we're looking at. I right click on it, copy, go to my page I'm editing, right click on there and paste it in there. Now it's not going to look the same in the editor, which I'll explain shortly. So the first thing you'll notice is instead of being just the width of the word gradient, it's the full width, and that's because by default this element is full width. So we want to get that element and tell it to align it itself to the left. And now that element only takes up the space that it needs in that flex container. All right, so that's the first thing we do. Now, I might want to change the copy on that. I might change that to an H2, for example. Publish that. Let's have a look at what this page looks like. So there we go. So we've got our secondary gradient from the secondary color through to transparent. It doesn't look like this in the editor. So we copied and pasted basically this one here. So that gradient there. So let's do the fourth one along and I'll show you the difference. If I go to the fourth one along and I right click, copy that, come back here, right click and I'll paste that in. Okay, again we're going to align it to the left so we only got the one size, and let's make that the H2 as well. Update that and have a look now. So now we've got the gradient going in that direction. I'm going to show you quickly why that doesn't work in the editor. So the problem we've got with the Elementor editor is that if we look at one of these here, I'm adding some classes to it. So I've said that it's got an underline, okay? And then the attributes for the actual underline gradient we want are set through these attributes here. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit there. So I've got a style attribute telling it that my underlying gradient is going to be my variable of a gradient from secondary to transparent. This does not translate to properties in the editor. It does in the front end, but not in the editor, which is why it doesn't look the same. So the only problem we've got with this is that when we're editing, these properties that we're using, so all of these are not going to look the same. So I'll give you an example here. If I grab, say, this rotated, so we'll grab the third one along from the bottom, so in our example markers. So we'll go to our markers, third one in the row from the bottom. If I copy that, and I paste that into there, and again we want to actually just put that on the left so it only takes up the space it needs. It doesn't look rotated. Now it's got my secondary background, or the accent, I can't remember what that is, because I've got these classes here. So the classes will apply, the CSS rules and the classes apply, but the attributes don't apply. So these are the reason I've done these attributes is so that you've got complete control over them. So when they're a CSS class, they're preset to whatever you've set in your CSS, and some of that's okay. For example, in this case, I want that to be a, where's my layouts, block marker, and it's my secondary modifier. So I want that to be my secondary color, so I can set that in the CSS. But if I want to set a rotation on that, let's say we set the rotation on that to say 10 degrees, so it's actually really rotated. I want to be able to control that on a per element basis, so I can't use the CSS for that. So the downside is that in the editor, you're not going to see it. But if I go to view that page, you can see it in there, so it's rotated by 10 degrees. It just doesn't look like it in the editor. So I hope Elementor will do something with that. It's been that way for a long time, where those attributes do not get transpiled into the editor. It'd be great if they did, but at this stage it doesn't do it. So hopefully that's something in the pipeline, but with Elementor, who knows what's in the pipeline, because there's no roadmap that we can even look at. So anyway, so that's pretty much why I'm doing this, is just to speed up my production. So I have a bunch of stuff here. I like this one, I right click, copy it from the editor, that is, paste it where I want it, change the properties that I want, and away we go. And once you've got it set the way you like, you can just duplicate that out in your editor or on other pages anyway. So this is really your starting point, and I'm going to grow this as I think of more things that I would like to do. I'm going to grow this so I've got these as a starting point for my designs. So I hope that's something that inspires you to do something similar. I won't share this out because this is specific to me and what I'm doing, and it still needs a lot of work. It's taken a lot of work to get to here. Still needs a lot of work, so I think all I'm trying to do with this has inspired you to do something similar. So create your own designs with your own blocks that you can copy and paste, that's ready to go. All right, so I hope you like this sort of thing. If you do, hit the subscribe, hit the like. Thank you.